G'day, boys and girls. Can anyone hear me? Apologies for the delay. As is tradition, wouldn't be a CSRC weekend stream without a myriad of technological issues that prevent it from getting going in a timely fashion. Mr. Pie Time, how are you? Good to see you. Can you hear me, mate? Am I coming through lickety-click, loud and clear? Yes, no, maybe, I don't know. Ryan, good day to you in the Rocky Mountains, chasing off bears as is tradition. Good to see you back, mate. Good to see you in the big streams as well. You've been helping out in the brief ones, in the planning ones. Who we got? Master Chief, Ryan, Avro Architect, loud and clear in Canada. Cthulhu Dreams, congratulations on another successful video. Thank you. Oh, you're actually talking about. I thought that was like sarcasm for a second because I just cooked this stream launch. But yeah, the Matrix one is done pretty well, thank you. Joel Dalton, what happened, lol? Yeah, so I had it all set up. It was scheduled, which means it showed there in the live video list. And I was like, that's sick. Now everyone will know that it's coming. It's not going to be a surprise. And then I got it all working. I was pretty much on time. And then the computer literally crashed, which killed the entire stream. So it recorded a 30-second stream to YouTube. I had to go and delete that one, set up a new one, launch that, and then I couldn't work out why no one was typing, and that's because the comments weren't set to public comments. It was locked to members-only comments for some reason, but we seem to be working now. Michael O'Donnell, first time on a live stream. Love your videos. No, thank you. Love you, Michael O'Donnell. IRL Donno Cry. Hello from Cambodia. Hello. I've been to Cambodia a long time ago. Fun place. Don't remember much. I may have been bloody a bit intoxicated in my time there, if you get what I mean. Sincerity on the internet, completely unexpected. I was talking about the Matrix video itself. Yeah, no, my bad. It's pays to have your guard up on the internet, you know. You assume the worst when people are saying stuff. It could just be my inherent paranoia as well. W, are you Australian? Yes, I am. Okay, I'm going to crack straight into it. Reason being that obviously I could wait for the stream to fill up with a few more people, but if I wait, and I explain this, I think pretty much every time, then I have to trim out all this fluff at the start for the VOD, which is the video recording that goes to YouTube. And then it's annoying for the viewers because I can't trim that out for about 24 to 48 hours because that's just YouTube's processing time. It's weird. And then secondly, if I trim out anything from this in YouTube's editor functionality, it gets rid of all the chat. So anyone watching the video later, they can't see all these interactions that are going on. So hence, I'm not going to sit here and wait for another 10 minutes to start. I'll pretty much crack straight into the slide. Show. Yes, yes. Young Thai ARFS soldier, pure Australian, and a funny little emoji. Nice. I've been to Thailand too. Couple times. Also a fun bloody place. Also don't bloody remember much because I was also intoxicated. Let's crack into it, okay? Let me pull up slideshow. So welcome everyone. Come one, come all. Welcome to the debrief. What we do here, and before I get too ahead of myself, I'm going to click slide. The purpose of these ones is so I release one of the videos. Either now I have kind of, I guess, two formats. I have the tactical analysis videos, which is the long form, or long, they're both long form. And then this latest video I did with the Matrix is what I'm calling tactically speaking. It's a bit of a play on words, you see. So that's, I guess, my two new main video series. And what I'm going to do, what I have done and shall continue to do, is that after I release a video, I give it about a week, and then the next weekend I jump on the live stream and I pretty much talk about the film. We chat a bit of poo about that. I'll expand on some of the things from the video from my side, as in stuff I want to elaborate on, maybe something I got wrong, issue some corrections, and also review some trends and themes from the comments. As in, I go over the comment section, and if there's like repeated questions or if there's repeated comments or fault corrections, then I'll review those. So that's pretty much what we're doing here. Get what I mean? Makes sense? And in between all that, flicking through the slideshow, I'll scan back and forth to the YouTube chat here and then review what you chaps are saying in the chat. Alright, makes sense. It's I'm going to try lock in on the slideshow and not get too distracted by the chat. So I'll like probably yap about a slide or two, and then go over to the chat and answer some questions or see what you guys are arguing about or trying to murder each other over. Just so I don't get too distracted and off track, because otherwise I will sit here and yap for like 4 hours. So the slideshows are just as much for keeping me on topic as it is to give you something to look at, if that makes sense. Cigarette smoking guy, welcome. There is no spoon. There certainly is not. Whatever happened to little there is no spoon kid? You know? What happened to him? He was like an Australian. I remember he was an Australian actor. He had an Australian accent. There is no spoon. I don't think he went on to anything else. Maybe he was just a one-time child actor. And this is why I don't read the chat. I'm never going to get anywhere. Okay, back to the slideshow. So again, we're discussing the film, and the film itself was The Matrix Revolutions, but particularly the Battle of Zion. From The Matrix Revolutions, which I just said. I'm repeating myself because I read the chat and got distracted. So I'm going to cover the chat with the slideshow, and then I'll flick it back to have a read of it. So, what did I talk about? The Battle of Zion from The Matrix Revolutions. The members who tuned in last weekend, so some of this slideshow, I'll confess, will be a bit of a bloody copy-paste for you guys. Also, to the uninitiated, I do these live streams after the big videos 1 week, or 1 week after, and they're public access. Anyone can jump in and yarn. But pretty much every week now, I've been pretty diligent in sticking to the schedule. Same time on the weekends, I've been running members-only live streams, where we pretty much discuss the next video coming. So instead of being a debrief, it's like a planning session. But the last one, obviously, it fell after the release of this video, so it was kind of just a wrap-up of how it all went in terms of what we thought was going to happen and what we discussed, and then to how it came to pass in terms of the video's execution. So yeah, to the guys who were in the members chat last weekend, I believe Ryan was there, Marty McFeels as well. I'm not sure if you're in this one today, Marty, but yeah, you might see a bit of copy-paste, and I apologize for that. But the points are valid again, which is why I've got to kind of double-tap them. So, the law of the film. This kind of, why I'm going over this is it takes a bit of refreshing, because A, it's complicated, and B, it's easy to forget. And it seemed that there were, you can, like I'd forgotten a lot of it prior to going back and making this video, right? And then you have to go back and, as I did, I rewatched the bloody series, not the 4th movie, to get just up to date on it and then kind of get my mind kicking again. And it is complicated. And I'll credit the film, because while, you know, I made a critique video, the terrific films. The Matrix is a bloody amazing series, particularly in, there's a lot of obvious reasons why it's incredible. So it was an incredible sci-fi action film. The gunplay, the visual effects, no questions there. That's the obvious stuff. But when I watch it again, and you think about the storyline, you think about the complexity of it, and you think about the themes, some of which we'll get into in this yarn, it's a pretty risky take. There were a lot of complex topics, I suppose, and many different interpretations, which for just a big budget, what is on the surface just action sci-fi film, it's got a lot of nuance to it. And it's really fun for that reason. And especially in hindsight, because I remember it's old as hell, I was young-ish when the first film came out. I remember seeing it in cinemas. And then the departure sort of in, not so much story, but in style from the first Matrix, seeing that in cinemas, which is just visual spectacle, bullet dodging, bullet traces, you know, the inspirations from John Woo and anime and that sort of stuff in terms of the visual effects, to then, it's a feast for the eyes, right? It's a visual spectacle. But then when you get into Reloaded and Revolutions, and it's really kind of a departure in terms of how it starts approaching the themes, hits more hard into our faith and destiny and free will versus what is preordained to happen and this sort of stuff. And it's not a simple story to follow, not in the slightest. So I tip my hat to it in that way, in that it's quite a risky series, the way they went, especially from part 1, The Matrix, to Matrix Reloaded, which at the time I think copped probably a lot of, maybe not heat, maybe not bad press, but criticisms, because it sort of, that is what people notice, right? It went from just dumb action flick to, what the hell is this? The underground raving naked in a cave, there are a bunch of hippies, where's my bullet time, and all that sort of stuff. But there's good films, especially they hold up in hindsight. Okay. Anyway, like I said, I'm yapping. But this is the crux of the story, right? I want to refresh this for everyone so it's as fresh in your mind as it was in my mind when I started making the video. So this is what they think, as in the people in the cave and who are a part of the real world. So someone born in the Matrix is going to be pretty much Superman, right? He's going to be the Messiah. He's going to end the war between them and the sentient machines, which have enslaved them into the Matrix, and let them bust out of there, pretty much get out of the simulation, go back into the real world, right? They know this because they're told so by the Oracle, which is the old black lady in the film. She is also a program, but she tells of the prophecy of the One, and therefore, as they interpret it, based on what the Oracle tells them, One equals the Savior, the Messiah. He's going to free them all from the shackles of oppression and unplug them all from the simulation, right? The Council, as in the hippies who chastise Jason Locke, which I kind of get into in the video a bit, they believe this in the purest literal sense, as I've got there on screen. I'm trying to not just bloody read the dot points. It's not engaging, but I'm trying to elaborate on them. They choose to believe the prophecy of the One in its most obvious literal sense. They think that is Neo. They put all their chips in Neo. That's it. That's all they think is the only thing that can save them. So anything else is a fruitless endeavor, including defensive military action, right? To be fair to the characters, it seems like there's a spectrum of their faith. So you've got on one end there's Morpheus and the other dude on the council, who I chipped in the video, Councillor West, and then you got Councillor Heyman, who's the old white dude. He seems a bit less zealous as the others. You can tell when he has that conversation with Neo at night, and he's talking about how he never sleeps. And when I was looking into this, there's some interesting back lore and backstory on this. So the old white dude on the council, when he meets Neo for that late night chit chat, and they're talking about the machines, and the theme of their conversation is, what is control? How do we define control? And I think the end result, or the outcome of that conversation, is they define it by something that you can turn off at will. But his whole thing, why he doesn't sleep, is because he was extracted from the Matrix, so he wasn't naturally born in Zion. And he felt like he'd spent the first, however old he was young, 15 years of his life asleep in the Matrix. So now he kind of doesn't sleep out of spite. He stays awake because he's felt like he's wasted too much of his life. Anyway, so the kind of spectrums or degrees of faith there, right? Next slide. The truth, or what is actually going on. So the prophecy is not real insofar as there is a One who is going to save them. It's a narrative manufactured by the machines to further control the humans of Zion. And this we know to be certain because they tell us there's been 5 ones before Neo. He is a programmed anomaly in the Matrix simulation system. And as too many people start rejecting the Matrix, which inherently happens, they can't avoid that happening. They talk about they tried to make a perfect Matrix, which was like Utopia, and it was failed. So they, made iteration after iteration of the Matrix until we get what we have now, which is pretty much the real world as we know it, or the real world in 1999, which is the timeline zone the Matrix is setting, the simulation that is, and when it was released. People just inherently reject it. And those rejects, they escape the system, they end up in Zion, right? For the real world. Once too many of these starts happening, they need to do a purge, like a system-wide reset of the Matrix. And that is when Neo, or the anomaly, is programmed to arrive, or spawn, I don't know what you call it, occur. And so once he spawns in, what's meant to happen is he goes and sees the architect, which is the old white KFC Colonel dude in the film, and he gets given 2 choices. He takes door on the left. I might be mixing the doors up here. Door on the left, and then the Matrix is reset. Zion is wiped out. He picks 23 survivors. They rebuild Zion, and everyone in the Matrix survives and goes on. Or if he chooses the other door, then Zion is wiped out anyway because the machines have the capacity to do so, and the Matrix crashes because it hasn't been rebooted in time, and then everyone plugged into the Matrix dies, and as he says, effectively leading to the, annihilation of the human race. Everyone dies. So at that point, it's like a zero-sum game. There is no winning. But Neo being Neo. So Neo is the anomaly within the anomaly, or the anomaly from the anomaly, right? So there's been 5 ones before him. They all took that choice of the door on the left. They chose to reset the Matrix, therefore wiping out Zion, but saving the billions of people plugged into the simulation. Neo doesn't do either of those things because he is so in love with Trinity that he elects to save her, because as he's having this conversation, she's falling to her death out of the windows, if you remember. She's in slow time, like shooting the 2, I think, micro Uzis back up at the agent who's jumping after her. So Neo rejects both choices, goes after her, which to the machine is like, does not compute, roboto, illogical, and it disrupts the whole plan, throws it into disarray. Neo then being the anomaly within the anomaly, he is then, he brokers a peace deal with the machines. So that's the way he brings about the war. So it's one of these things like, does he fulfill a prophecy? Kind of, but not for all the reasons that the people in the council think. Get what I mean? Is everyone up to speed on the plot now? I feel it's like important to kind of have your head wrapped around that, because knowing what we know really helps you understand the interactions between these characters and why they think the way they do. Get what I mean? Let me read the chat. Who we got? Pie Time, HK, $10. Oh, bloody Pie Time, you're a legend, mate. Thank you for the HK $10. Please make How to Survive Matt Braley's Amphibia. What the hell? What's Matt Braley's Amphibia? I don't know what that is, sorry, mate. You were asking for Pie Time. You still want Endor. You're normally asking for Endor, mate. The raid on Endor. Who else we got? Marty McFields, you're back. Welcome, mate. Joel, welcome back. Master Chief, makes sense to me. Make sure to like and subscribe, mates. Ah, thank you, Ryan. That wasn't me. That was Ryan bloody said that. Deputy says 30mm cannon ammo will probably have one, or at least have it included in the belt. Okay, we'll get into the ammo. I've got a few slides for that, so fear not. Cigarette smoking guy. He's quoting the meme, the Morpheus meme. Let me scroll up. Neo, wake up from your comfy office job and active social life. You're a human battery, Neo. Come in a cave with us and eat porridge slop. I love that meme. It's done poor Lawrence Fishburne no favors. It makes his gap tooth really pronounced. Poor fella. Lawrence Fishburne in Apocalypse Now. Bit of fun cinema trivia for you. I'm not sure if everyone knew that. I feel I mentioned this before, but Lawrence Fishburne plays Mr. Clean in Apocalypse Now, and I think at the time he lied about his age because he was so young. He was 16. But yeah, he's what is he? He's like the gunner's mate, or his navy, or obviously whatever they are in Apocalypse Now. But yeah, go rewatch Apocalypse Now and you'll see Morpheus there running the 50 cals. It's pretty sick. And yes, he was skinny AF. Who else we got? Pie Time says, got extra large wildlife and sentient sapient amphibians similar to us humans but different. What is this, a movie or a show? Oh, sorry, you've said it here. It's a Disney show named an Australian-sized alien continent on another planet in another universe. Okay, I'll have to look into it. I can't say I've heard of it, to be honest. Let me hydrate here real quick because I'm getting thirsty from bloody gobbing. Tama Malosi says, Hadley's Hope versus Enos. Yes, it will happen one day. I can't promise it will be soon. Every time someone says aliens or Hadley's Hope, though, I bring up the same point, which is it's rather difficult to present on a map, on a battle map, and do simulations, right? Obviously, because they go underground. So I think with aliens, what I'll end up doing is one of these videos, the tactically speaking videos, which doesn't necessarily need the battle map. And then I'm kind of more free to discuss it in a way that can do it justice and not get locked into trying to do the simulation. Get what I mean? Tristan, has anyone suggested you do a video on how to actually win the Emu War? Sorry for mentioning the Army's most egregious loss, the Emu War. No, oh, you know, there's Emu War comments in most videos as soon as I think people are like, oh, he's Australian, lol, Emu War. But I don't think there's been a sincere request to do the Emu War. I potentially could one day. But no, not in a sincere effort. Mostly just, it's used as a barb, right? Emu War is just like the Australian version of, it's like the low-hanging, let's tease Australian Army thing, fruit. What's the other parallels, you know? French white flag, lol, surrender. What are Americans? Americans friendly fire, lol, bomb our allies. Lol. So yeah, it's just like low-hanging army fruit. It's about time we had one, really. We didn't really have a thing that was systemically teased about as the Australian military, but now I get it. It's the internet. It's the emu war. Lost to emus. Okay. Norian Arihuna says, low key, the hog war is the United States version of the emu war. Hog war. You have a hog war? You're trying to kill hogs? Did you lose the hog war? Well, apparently we lost the bloody emu war. I did not even know about the emu war until I saw internet comments teasing me, an Australian, for losing, or a former Australian military dude, for losing a war to emus. I was like, what the hell are they talking about? Lost a war to emus. And then you look it up and it's like 2 dudes in a Jeep with a machine gun who killed emus until they simply gave up. It's like, oh, okay. It's like, if that's the thing we're getting teased for as the Australian army, I'll take it. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, sick. We shot emus until we got sick of it and then went home. I'll take that. Emu war. Joel Dalton, I bought a World War II French rifle. It was a great buy, never been fired, dropped once. There you go. There's the classic. There's the classic. If you do a video on how to win the emu war, make it an April Fool's Day video. That's actually a good idea. That is actually a fun idea. Matthew Weeks, it's 11 p.m. and I'm awake. What's going on? Hard to say, mate. Anyway, I'm going to kick back on. So let's discuss Jason Locke a little bit, because I brought him up in the film. But let's dive a little bit deeper into, him as a leader, because I think people thought I was arbitrarily glazing him and putting down the council. But, he's not without his faults. He is not perfect. So what's good about him, if we're going off our sort of leadership characteristics? He's very pragmatic and disciplined. He's focused on the outcome, right? He wants to make good decisions that will get the best result. And he does so with the discipline and, resolve of a military man, right? He's decisive in that he's shown to make decisions quickly and more impressively, which I was discussing with the members in the last members live stream. He's not afraid to reverse a decision, which we see him do in the middle of the battle, which is arguably one of the hardest things a leader, particularly in combat, can do, to express not maybe doubt in your own decision, but to take the advice of someone else and then say, you know what, yeah, that's a better idea, or you know what, you're right, let's actually do that. And I think it's that scene when they're discussing the hammer, which is the ship approaching, and the EMP, and he's saying, no, let's not let it in, that's dumb. If they shoot the EMP, it's going to destroy our defense network and wipe out the dock. And one of his subordinates, that other captain dude or whoever he is like, oh yeah, but we already lost the dock, so who cares? And he's like, oh, you see his face, it's not explicit, but he's like, yeah, fair bump. And then he ends up letting the ship in and they fire the EMP. He's analytical in his decisions, and I sort of got to this in the video, that he's shown to make some good plans, and he does some good assessments on particularly the enemy and what he thinks they're going to do, and most of it kind of plays out pretty much how he anticipated for the most part. It's just that they really lacked the means to effectively tackle the enemy courses of action, despite him having predicted them correctly. Some of his negative traits, though, he is pretty much just overtly and outrightly dismissive of the prophecy, that is Neo, right? So he is a grounded, dyed-in-the-wool, born in Zion. I don't believe in goblins and ghosts or any of this prophecy and spiritual stuff. I believe in steel and cold, hard metal of machine guns firing 30mm cannons into the air. When, it might pay for him to be more open-minded towards the prophecy that is the One and Neo. And particularly because, and it was mentioned in the chat a few times by a few people, at this stage, why the council are maybe not vindicated, but they are fair to believe in Neo, is I think at this point they've seen, or they've been told at least, they didn't all see it, but Neo was stopping squids in the real world, which happens at the very end of Matrix Reloaded. So Neo has displayed some truly remarkable things, he turned water into wine and he fed the poor, and he's space Jesus, right? Well, not space Jesus, he's future cave underground Zion Jesus. So they have witnessed some. Fernando, Dad's streaming, mate, settle down. I'll bring you food in a sec. Sorry, me cat going skits. What was I saying? Yeah, it might pay to be a bit more open-minded about the prophecy, especially noting what they've seen to this point regarding Neo. Second one here, he's a bit resentful, spiteful. And we see this based on there's a bit of tension between him and Morpheus, because Niobe, played by Jada Plinkett Smith, which I had completely forgotten that was Jada Plinkett Smith until I think Ryan brought it up last week in the members live. And Jada Plinkett Smith and Will Smith, there's a bit of you know what's going on with them. They've got I'm on eggshells here, boys. Anyway, Jada Plinkett Smith, Morpheus, and Jason Locke, they had a bit of a three-way triangle going on kind of thing. She used to be with, I think, Morpheus. Now she's with Locke, and he's a bit jealous. He's still a bit jealous and resentful of Morpheus, which is somewhat in part to this relationship as well. He's a little bit hot-headed. He's a bit emotional. We see him lose his temper with the council, which is, not good, but I sympathise with him. Sometimes you bloody lose your temper and you don't want to show your hands, but you can't help it because you're confronted with something that you feel is so stupid or so insane. But it happens. So that's something that, he could bloody dial in a bit, and it would keep his maybe credibility in front of the council there particular. And his last one is he's died in the military man, authoritarian, right? Like down the line, I'm the boss, you follow me, which might limit not his creative thinking, but, it could stunt his open-mindedness to perspectives from outside his chain of command or outside the military. Okay, next slide, because I'm yapping. Let me read a few comments here. Justice for Fernando. Mate, he's well fed, trust me. He don't need food right now. He can wait. Sorry, that comment from Matthew Burnham. I'll read the names of the comments in case they don't come through in the VOD as well. He's not neglected, boys. I promise you. He just wants to just be wherever I am or do whatever I'm doing. Do you hear the drums, Fernando? I understand that reference, but I can't remember it. Joel says, I thought the triangle included Will Smith. Bloody, you never know. Maybe it included Chris Rock as well. Who did he slap? Yeah, Chris Rock. Keep his wife's name out of your mouth, whatever you do, boys. Cigarette smoking guy, you beat the pussy. Calm down, mate. Settle down. Let's keep it PG, huh? Jason, you blokes are bloody mad in the chat. They're gonna trip me up. I'm gonna read something aloud just without thinking, and then say a no word, and end up with a cancellation for my nation. Slide back to the PowerPoint. Jason Locke versus the council, right? So we talked about Jason Locke. I wanted to elaborate on this dude, who is Councillor West, because I gave him a pasting in the video. Well, I didn't give him pasting. My exact phrase was that this guy sucks, because I do think he sucks, and I want to kind of elaborate why, aside from the reasons I showed in the video or the evidence I provided in the video. Quote, Councillor West, comprehension is not a requisite of cooperation. Way to be a toxic leader. So yeah, this is a very, if you have a manager or a boss or a military leader use this phrase to you, they are probably not to be trusted. It's just at this level. And let's be fair. It's not just the words. He's also presented it in an intentionally condescending way, right? So it's not just the message, but he meant this collection of words, this phrase, in the most condescending sense that you could possibly interpret it. And he's shown to be they try and make him come across as wise, calm, and philosophical, but in reality, he doesn't clearly articulate his desires, what he wants, or what he thinks, what he suggests should happen. He's a zealot who purely believes in Neo, and seemingly, because of that, doesn't care about the military, doesn't care about anything Jason Locke's got to say in terms of the battle strategy regarding defense of Zion. And he's not clear in his commands. He lacks transparency. He just he doesn't explain the why behind doing things, which, yes, in the military, of course, there's times when there's context where it's not appropriate to explain the why. Go charge that machine gun nest. Oh, but why? Right? There's time and place. But I would argue in most other circumstances, the why is what enables people to effectively carry out missions. And I think it's one of the key supporting concepts behind mission command. That is, instead of being very rigid and very tight in your guidance or instructions, as in micromanaging, it's you say, here's a broad arc of what I need you to achieve. How you achieve it, I don't care. Just go do it. And to do that, though, to effectively issue guidance in that broad way, which then will enable creative problem solving, you have to explain the why, or the people or the subordinate unit executing that mission command has to understand the why. And we do this in the military, even when we're giving our orders. It's maybe not as clear as just like, why are we doing this? But if you look into any set of orders, you always have sort of your purpose, method, end state. And the purpose will typically explain the why behind your mission statement from the 1-up or 2-up level commanders, right? So even though it's not that overt in the military, we generally still explain the why. You understand how your part of a mission fits into a broader or larger set of missions, or operations perhaps, which is very important, because if you don't understand why you're doing something, A, you're not going to come up with creative ways to solve that tactical problem. B, you're not going to care about it or have any buy-in. You might even feel resentment or frustration, and therefore not complete the mission to the best of your, or plan the mission to the best of your ability. So yeah, the why is very important. So this guy literally just saying comprehension is not a requisite of cooperation is just a shitty, toxic thing for any leader or manager to say. And it's especially bizarre coming from someone who's seemingly so wise as this guy. And, you know, the council are just hide behind their veneer of like wisdom and the spirituals and all this sort of stuff. It's like, man, just what are you talking about? You're insane. You suck. Anyway, that's why I wanted to elaborate on why this guy sucks. Comments. Peter Bowie. That entire council were all old people, so pretty realistic. Yeah, they are a bunch of old hippies, right? Joel Dalton, give your subordinates the reason in the end state and then let them innovate. Yeah, that's pretty much. Ryan Dawes, because I said so is the greatest line in parenting. Yeah, that's true. Marty McFeels, at Locke's level, he should probably be given some strategic flexibility from the council, just like they should explain their reason and goals, not like he's a new corporal. Yeah, they kind of treat him like a buster, just like he's just some bum. And it's pretty evident that dudes like this, Councillor West, they don't care about the military solutions at all. Okay, we're starting to get in the comments here, so I'm going to wrap this up, or not wrap this up, but I'll the prophecy, the recap part. So in the sense of who is right, you can't boil it down that easily. But if, you know, gun to your head, who is right in the simplest of answers, they're pretty much both right. With the luxury of hindsight and purely based on what happens, you could make an argument, or it might be fair to say that the council are right, because they said, no, Neo's the only chance we've got to survive, and Neo, it turns out, was the only chance they've got to survive, right? But they don't know that at the time. They were both right. They were both right to A, plan militarily for the defense of the city, and B, have faith in Neo. So kind of like what we got at earlier, Locke probably could have done with a bit more open-mindedness towards the One. Not so much the prophecy of the One, but Neo personally, right? And the council could have done with a bit more pragmatism in putting faith in Locke to still defend the city. So yes, in hindsight, the council, in terms of what happened, were right, but they were both right at the time, which again is why it's such a great movie. It's so fascinating. And these themes of like belief and faith and what do you do for the outcome, or what do you do to try and get the best outcome? And I suppose it's almost it explores, what are those two ethical concepts, right? Utilitarianism and deontology, as in doing I think utilitarianism, I'm shaky, pretty much doing the greatest good for the greatest many. You're focused on the outcome, right? Whatever happens at the end, how you get there is less important than that the end result is the best result. Versus deontology, which is like duty-bound set of ethics, in that how you do things matters more than the end result. As in, maybe you didn't get the best end result, but the steps you took to get there were the best things to do, right? Or the most virtuous or ethical things to do. So it's, again, interesting, fascinating like exploration of concepts from this film. Joel says, pray for help, but row for sure. Exactly. And I've got a comment which I really liked on this note. This comment, which you should see on screen now. I'm starting to get into the comments from the video. Shazada says, trust God, but tie your camel. Fine, Neo is the prophecy, but no harm in building your defense just in case. And I really like that. That's a really cool metaphor, I suppose. It's pretty much the same thing as what Joel just said with pray for help, but row for shore, but in a different setting. I'm going to guess this is like an old Arab proverb. Say what you want, but the Arabs have some sick metaphors, that's for sure. Trust God, but tie your camel. I love that. It's very, very good visual, and it speaks very, I think, very well to what the Matrix is about, right? Like plan, much like Locke is doing, but have faith, much like the Council is doing. And I think that also gets kind of to, what's that gambit? There's a gambit that is that it makes more sense to be faithful and pious and believe in God, because the result of not believing in God is much worse than the result of believing in God. What's that called? Pascal's wager. I think it's Pascal's gambit or Pascal's wager, right? So I think he suggests that, long story short, why would you not believe in God? If you do believe in God, then, and you are proven correct, then you get to go to heaven forever. If you don't believe in God and you're wrong, then you go to the fiery depths of hell forever. So it's like this very, I'm not sure what kind of philosophy that take is on, but yeah, that's what that says. And that's kind of, I think, very fitting for the Matrix as well. Interesting stuff. And that also reminds me of seeing, what's his name? Shahzada's comment here, trust God, but tie your camel. It reminds me of this fun scene from Kingdom of Heaven, which I've got on the slide here. You should be looking at the photo of Saladin. This is the actor that plays Saladin. Obviously, it's not the real Saladin. Kingdom of Heaven, great flick. You should also go check that out if you have not. Long, but still a good film. And he's having an argument with one of the other dudes. They're doing like some battle planning in their tent there. I think it's before the siege of Jerusalem in the Third Crusade, rather. And this other bloke and him, they're getting into it. Mullah says, God alone determines the results of battles. And then Saladin has this great scene where he gives him this comeback. And the whole gist of the message is pretty much like the previous bloke said, which is, yeah, trust in God, but tie your camel. The results of battles are determined by God, but also by preparation, numbers, the absence of disease, and the availability of water. One cannot maintain a siege with the enemy behind. How many battles did God win for the Muslims before I came? That is, before God determined that I should come. It's a great scene. Go check it out. Not trying to offend any Arabs with my impression there. I think it's pretty bloody decent impression there. I've watched the film a few times. But it's a fun scene, and it speaks to the whole thing about how, yes, plan, but also have faith. And Kingdom of Heaven also explores how there's zealots on both sides. So on the Muslim sides and the Christian sides, they both have this problem of dealing with like zealots who are not pragmatic and not planning, and just have like, no, we're going to win this battle because God says we're going to win it, and that's it. It's like, okay, yep, I think God says we're going to win it too, but we also kind of need water and swords, and we've only got 10 dudes, so let's gather some reinforcements maybe. It's a great film in that way when it explores that. Okay, read some comments real quick from both the live chat and the comments. Matthew Burnham, for Pascal's wager, my view of it was always, well, wouldn't God know you're believing in him for an ulterior purpose and, not leading to heaven? That's a bloody good point. Yeah, I'm not an expert in bloody theology or the theory of Pascal's wager, but that seems like common sense too. I would suggest that Pascal's wager probably has its fair share of logic holes and fair criticisms, as you've just pointed out. But it certainly is an interesting take, and as is yours. I think that's a very fair critique. Tama says, the extended version only though, bro. Great film. You know what? I don't think I've ever actually seen the extended version. I've only seen the cinematic cut, which is still obscenely long, I think. Okay, I'm going to start getting into comments here. Let me have some water real quick, because I'm thirsty. I'm a thirsty bitch. Okay, so getting into some of the themes here from the comments on the video. Here we've got these bloody pictures. I'm leaning into the screen. You can't see me. Rain Draziel. His little PFP is a little cat, little ginger tabby cat drinking a bloody coffee. That's cute. Just one question. Why would machines attack directly? They just need to throw poisonous gas or explode a nuclear device or create a virus that would kill 100% of everyone there. They had no reason to do this, attack Zion head on. Or they could do something more brutal, avoid the humans, look for their food source and destroy them, then just let human nature take its course. Yeah, it's a very fair question, and it's fun to think about. Well, it's not fun to think about people being horrifically gassed and poisoned to death, but the question of, yeah, why do they attack the humans the way they do is interesting to think about. And I've got another comment here from someone else that also kind of expands this line of thinking, that they do some strange things in regards to the machine versus human war when you kind of scratch away below the surface for more than a couple of seconds. And it's a fair question. Why don't they just drill that hole and then pump it full of poisonous gas? They're explicitly trying to wipe everyone out. They're not trying to do a campaign where they target or kill select people, but maintain the trust or the good favor of the people of Zion. They don't care. In a literal sense, they're machines, they don't care. But secondly, they're not trying to save anyone. They just need to exterminate everyone. So yeah, sending in your flying squid robots that were previously, I think, mechanical engineering machines. Like, I don't think the squids were actually built to be machines of war or combat robots. They're like a repair and Mr. Fix-It kind of thing, like a Mr. Handy from Fallout. But now they've just been repurposed as murder machines. So it is an interesting one to think about, but we've got another slide that will let us elaborate in that. Okay. Here's a few I've got two slides that speak to this. Here's a few conflicting, or not conflicting, yeah, they are conflicting viewpoints, but also different takes regarding the prophecy, which is also why I wanted to yap about the prophecy so long at the start of this video, because I wanted it fresh in everyone's mind before we dive into the comments. So Burmes Livre, I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry mate. He says, problem is the common sense approach is factually the wrong one here. Locke is wrong, and the movie correctly portrays his behavior as wrong. Zion could never have enough firepower to withstand a machine assault, because if they ever came close to it, the machines would wipe them out before they managed to do it. It's a war that can't be won by fighting. Now, a lot of what Burmes Livre says here is not wrong. It's factually true to say that Zion doesn't have enough firepower. That is true. It's a war that they can't win by fighting. That is also true. I don't agree or think it's true to say that Locke is wrong. Partly for the reasons I mentioned about before, that Burmes Livre here, as we, are viewing this all through the lens and glory of hindsight. And again, this is one of those things, why it's such a good film. Look at the conversations it's making people have. To cast our judgment based on hindsight is a dangerous thing to do, because you're not experiencing that setting in the way that the people who were making the decisions in which you are judging were. I'll move on to these other comments though. Rickcheer2151 says, I think the funny thing is the commander was absolutely right. Even when accounting for the prophecy, Zion was destroyed 5 times prior. All times they still had the prophecy, because the entire thing is designed by the machines. They allow humans who would have rejected the Matrix leave the Matrix, create Zion, pull more people who would reject the program no matter what out of the program to prevent it from crashing. Though they think they're freeing them. Then when the one appears, Zion is destroyed and the one chooses 23 people from the Matrix to create the new Zion. So Rick is here is familiar with the lore, or the background. All 5 previous iterations believed in that prophecy. All 5 were destroyed all the same, with no knowledge of the previous Zions. Neo just kind of got lucky that Agent Smith turned into a virus that the machines couldn't handle. Right, so yeah, Neo is the anomaly within the anomaly. Again, is it luck? Is it fate? Is it force? Is it, preordained destiny? Who knows? But the gist here is that I can see how both these comments can kind of be true at the same time. But it depends how you view, I suppose, the problem. And as both these guys have pointed out, we know things that the people making the decisions in the film don't know. And that's why it's such an interesting ethical discussion. Like the first guy saying, Locke is wrong, and he's obviously wrong, and he's right to be shown as being wrong. There was never enough firepower. Well, they don't know that. And then you could argue that, well, what's the alternative? You do nothing? You just sit there and die? Just have hope? That rely purely on hope? Don't bother putting up the defenses, boys. Lay down your arms. We're going to go rave and just hope that the machines don't wipe us out. But then Ricky here on the bottom, you could argue against Ricky, because by the same token, they don't know that the the Matrix has been wiped, that Zion has been wiped out 5 times previously and annihilated 5 times before, and that the council are utter fools for believing in the prophecy because it's been wiped out 5 times before. So that's why it's so interesting, right? In terms of the conversation of who is right and who is wrong. And then bring us to this one, which is, I suppose, a balanced take by, just his last line here. Keith Harper, 32, says, in the council's defense, I think they realized the dock was going to create unsustainable casualties and wanted to hold something back for the temple battle later. Also, maybe the council realized military logic as demonstrated by Locke is easily predictable and thus easily countered and defeated. This point just came up in a recent video from another YouTuber. Shout out to a certain directed energy weapon. I don't know what that means. So they were hoping for something more unconventional that could actually work against such superior enemy, which they got in the form of Neo, which Locke and some captains are getting supporting. They were still rude about it, but no one was outright wrong here. So I don't agree with everything Keith is saying here, but the last sentence he's put there is pretty much the nuts and guts of what I wanted to highlight from his comment. No one is outright wrong here, and I do agree with that statement. I think he's giving the council too much credit in his first sentence when he says, I think they realized the dock was going to create unsustainable casualties and wanted to hold something back for the temple later. And I spoke to that in the video when Councillor West does his half the infantry. And then Commander Locke counters with his, like, yeah, if we're up to me, I'd have every person in here put a gun in their hand and then go and fight. Excuse me, I'm burping, rude. I'm burping again, double rude. I think he's giving them too much credit because, again, they could have simply said that. Maybe they did and we weren't showing the dialogue and that happened off screen. But based on what I'm seeing in how the council are presented, I'm not going to give them this much credit for their tactical nous. Because it's simply, there's no pattern to indicate that that is how they are thinking or discussing with Locke. I think it is that a lot of them are just purely zealots who think that Locke should just do nothing because Neo's going to save the day. But his last sentence, like I said there, that's pretty much what I agree with. No one is outright wrong here. And I think that's the most fair take to have. Especially, again, hindsight. They don't know what we as the viewers know. So ultimately, they were both doing, well, they both believed in what they were doing, but for very different reasons. Let's check some comments here really quick. Rafael Raimundo, Laserpig, a YouTuber. Laserpig, a YouTuber. Okay. I'm not familiar with Laserpig. What does he do? He make Matrix videos, movie videos? Easily defeat, or military videos. Van Weapon, do you think Agent Smith actually went rogue or were his actions part of the machine's plan to destroy Zion the whole time? No, I think it's pretty explicit that Agent Smith is rogue, and he is a virus that the machines did not plan and did not want. And this is because, again, anomaly within the anomaly. Agent Smith only came about because of Neo. He didn't come about because of the prophecy that is the one. So Agent Smith does not happen every cycle. He's a second order effect of the double anomaly that is Neo. So at the end of the first movie, Natrix, I was about to call him Matrix, Neo. That's like it'd be like a meme, right? That's like the Morbin Time thing. Matrix Man. Matrix is gonna do the thing, Matrix Man. Neo jumps inside Agent Smith, blows him up, and somehow that imprints their code together. So Agent Smith starts getting some of the powers of Neo. And so Smith only comes about because of the anomaly that is Neo. So no. I don't think his actions are part of the machine's plan. He is an unintended consequence. Unintended consequences occur of the anomaly that is Neo. Joel Dalton, a good question. How many residents were there in Zion? How prepared were they for kinetic war? There's 250,000 people, give or take. And I say that somewhat confidently because in the same bit of dialogue where they tell us there are 250 squids is when we learn the population of the Matrix, because as they're having that conversation, there must be how do you say quarter as an American? Quarter of a million, that's a terrible American accent. 250,000 sentinels up there. And then Morpheus walks in and is like, that's right, 1 sentinels for every man, woman, and child in Zion. Does that not sound like the thinking of a machine? So we know that there's 250k sentinels and people in Zion. I assume that it's, an approximation, but bloody close enough for government work. You get what I'm saying? 250k. Rafael Raimondo says, concerning agents, do you think law enforcement should have Desert Eagles? Yes, absolutely, they should have Desert Eagles, and only the 50 cal Action Express version as well. Whichever one has the smallest magazine capacity and the largest caliber, that's the Desert Eagle that law enforcement should have. Core. Yeah, but you're saying Michael Ladot core inverted commas too, but I don't say core the same way you Americans do, mate. You guys core. Like we can't say R as Australians. Our R is AH. There's memes about us now. Oh no. I saw this funny thing. You know that thing, the bit about how Australians say oh no, which oh no. If you apparently as an American you say RNR like Romeo November Romeo, then you sound like an Australian saying oh no. R&R. So if I'm doing like an American accent and then I want to say R&R, it sounds like oh no in Australian. Pretty funny. That works. Moving on. Before my bloody shit accents get everyone to quit. Shit impressions, rather. Okay, another comment here from Brian Rocha. And this one is black because I had to take this screenshot from my phone because it's translated from, I believe, Espanol or maybe Portuguese. Brian Rocha says, I believe that one of the reasons the council ignores the general is because the council knows about the alliance with the machines and the reset happens every 100 years and there was no point in fighting. I disagree. And there are a few comments to this setting, or sorry, speaking to this same theme, suggesting that the council are so firm in their beliefs and so confident because they're part of it. I don't think they are. I don't think the council are in on it. They have no idea about the resetting of Zion. They have no idea that they've been genocided 5 times previously. I think it's giving them too much credit, and there's no indication from the film that they are in on the conspiracy from the machines. And it wouldn't make sense that they are. The machines need everyone to believe in the prophecy of the One as a means of control. Anyone in Zion who knows the truth can logically then spread that truth that, hey, yeah, this is all actually pointless because we've been annihilated 5 times before, so let's fight harder. You know what? We're not going to believe in Neo and the One because we know that it's failed 5 times before and that Zion gets wiped out. So it's not in the machine's interest to have anyone in Zion know the truth, which is primarily why I don't agree with this statement. It doesn't make sense that A, they would let that happen, and B, I don't believe that conspiracy could be kept alive. Fernando, I've told you, mate, you'll get bloody food when I'm done. Relax, calm your tits, fella. Sorry, chat and Brian Rocha. I just don't see any evidence to this, Brian, and I don't think that's the case. Okay, I was getting to this earlier. Mostly Penny Cat says, so did the machines also leave guns and ammo factories lying around for the next Zion? To which I replied, once you start thinking about the Zion reset, some funny stuff starts to happen. And this is, I was speaking about this a bit earlier, this is fun to think about. So again, once you know the reality of the situation, which is Zion has been wiped out 5 times previously and then rebuilt from the ground up with 23 people. When you give that more than 5 seconds of thought, particularly the logistics of that, yeah, what? And then I think about, I have this funny vision. You could do like a really good Robot Chicken or Family Guy Blue Harvest-esque skit out of it, where it shows like these 2 squids and they're down in the depths of Zion and they've got like mop and bucket and there's body parts hanging from the roof and there's blood everywhere from all the dead people. And these 2 squids having this conversation like, every 100 years we come down and we wipe these morons out and they send us to clean up the mess. Why don't we just use poison gas? It's like, yeah, why don't we use poison gas? It's like, why do we have to chop them into, like, you know what I mean? It's absurd to think about. The machines go down there, they eviscerate the entire population. There's 250,000 dead bodies. And what did the machines do? Do they have to, like, clean up all the corpses and then get rid of them? And then they just spawn in the 23 new people from the Matrix and they wake up and they're like, where am I? Oh, wow. Why are there 30mm bullet holes all over the place? What happened here? And if not, then do the machines, do they get the SPAC filler out? And the machines are flying around the dock, like with their bucket of grout, like filling in the 30mm holes and patching out the concrete. Nothing to see here. Don't worry about it. So yeah, it's a weird thing to think about. Uh, as Van has just said here in the comments, which yes, I agree is plausible. I thought they would have just physically changed the location of Zion. That is possible too. Um, we don't know if they change the location of Zion every time, but even so, if they do that, like how many underground cities could there possibly be? Are they building them every time? There's these squids, or picture these other machines. It's like, hang on, we're at war with these humans, right? It's like, yeah, we are. It's like, so why are we building them a whole city? Well, because, we're about to wipe out the other city, so we're going to need a new city for the 23 people to go. It's like, why do we do this? It's like, well, I just shut up. It's like, I picture these machine grunts, like really resentful of having to build this machine city or this human city every 100 years. And then also, the logistics of their kit and equipment too. The APUs, for example. I get the impression the APUs is just leftover kit from the old machine war. I don't think the machines are building them new APUs to leave in Zions. I think they're inheriting just whatever APUs they have left from the Great Machine War. I think when I was looking up the numbers on this, at some point there was thousands of APUs, and just over the course of Zion being wiped out, they'd been attrited. But then also speaks to, hey, did it start with 1,000 in the first Zion? And did 23 people wake up one day and be like, oh, why do we have 1,000 mech warriors with 30mm cannons and 2 billion rounds of ammo? What are these for? I hope we don't need to use these. It's just weird to think about. You get what I mean? Is that just me? Once you kind of give it a few seconds of thought, it kind of unravels pretty quick. And there was another comment too, which I didn't put in, so I can't remember who mentioned it, but the whole human battery thing is also, I think, pretty dumb once you think about it for a few seconds. These hyper-intelligent AGI machines that have taken over the world don't have a more efficient energy source than a human being in a pod full of pink ectoplasm. Like, come on, what the fuck are we talking about here, boys? Let's get real. And on the same note, they're that technologically advanced they can harvest human beings as a battery for power and energy, but they can't then do that same, or do research on that corpse and determine, oh yeah, we are instantly just develop this super toxic neuro poison that we can just like pump down the hole and they'll all be dead in like 2 seconds. Because we know every in and out of the human body more than a human doctor ever did. Cool, huh? Comments. Arlindo, it would need a movie to explain the human battery is not good. It would be better to use as processor power. Yeah, look, I feel there's got to be a YouTube channel, or there's got to be a video dedicated to this stuff. I don't think there'd be a lot of answers. You could do a lot of speculation and kind of have fun with it. But yeah, moving on. This comment I just liked. I thought this was a very interesting take, very well thought out, so I'm just going to read it as it is. Peter Westmere 576 says, the historical context. The Matrix sequels launched very shortly after the Bush administration had invaded Iraq and instituted one of the most oppressive surveillance regimes in recent American history. I'm burping, excuse me, rude. Locke was in many ways a proxy for American imperialism in a movie with openly anarchist politics. A secular institutionalist in a movie that celebrates spiritualism and individualism. True. That said, the movie's plot decisions are utterly at odds with Locke's portrayal as morally misguided. He's fighting a defensive battle against machines that are definitionally incapable of human emotion, reason, or remorse, and whose goal is explicit genocide. Even if we take Sari, which is the little Indian chick from Matrix Reloaded, as proof that the machines are capable of emotion, these emotions had no impact on the machine's decision to spare Zion that was purely aligned self-interest. The prophecy of the One was a machine psyop, so Locke's skepticism is not exactly rebuked. And if we take Matrix Resurrections as part of the canon, the machines broke the peace once it was in their interest to do so. It's just a really cool thought-out take. And I hadn't considered that part he mentioned about the global climate at the time being post-GWAT or 2003 invasion of Iraq, I suppose, and how that tied into potentially some of the themes that the Wachowskis were trying to paint. But then I really like his take about Locke, and he says it in a lot of ways that are better than I could, to be honest. So really interesting comment here from Peter Westman. I just thought I'd share that, in that it kind of vindicates, I suppose, if vindicates, I felt, my thoughts about Locke, but he just articulates much better than I did in the video. So pretty cool take. What do you guys think about that? Reprise Online, first time in the stream and just wanted to say, love your vids, man. Thank you, love you, Reprise Online. I'm just going to have a sip of water because I'm thirsty. Raphael says, what is Matrix Resurrection? It's the 4th film that came out like 2 years ago. It's a sequel. Actually, you know, I don't think it's fair to call it a sequel. It's a sequel, yes, by the pure definition. It's more like a soft reboot. I did not like. I don't even remember it that well. I remember sort of feeling it was, I don't know, at odds with some of the messages the first films were playing. But then it turned out apparently there's this whole thing that they were like, the directors were arm twisted into making that, and so they pretty much just took the piss with the film. I think that's what ended up happening, and I would believe that conspiracy just based on what you see in the film, that they sort of made a mockery of their own intellectual property out of spite of being made to do a remake of it, and me being made to do a sequel. Okay. Cthulhu Dreams. After the first movie, they didn't have the ability to tell the studio to bugger off. Yeah. Nate Weeks. It was a desperate attempt for money from people with no imagination. Yeah, I think that's part of, certainly part of, well, I don't think that's conspiracy, that's common sense logic. Arlindo, that is good. I bet he thought it was a psyop because he knew about Neo's powers, and even with this, he didn't believe there is something up with that. Reprisal. In my opinion, Resurrection wasn't terrible, but it was kind of just sad. Yeah. Yeah, look, I don't remember liking it. I can't exactly articulate why. Disappointing. Yeah, that's probably how I felt watching Resurrections. Moving on. Okay. We'll get into some of the numbers now, right? Because the comments kind of were broken into 2 key themes. There was people talking about the lore of the film, either elaborating, expanding, or criticizing how I presented it, or the numbers, as in some of the maths, elaborating, expanding, or criticizing it. Flow rate, this comment here. I think there is something about the flow rate of the squids you should look into. 12,500 squids a minute equals 208.3 squids a second, so can this really fit through the hole? I think they were squeezing as much as they could, but much. He's talking about the hole, right, and the flow rate. I initially wanted to do exactly this. I wanted to work this into the calculations, as in they have the torpedo digging breach hole. How big is a squid? How many squids can they fit through the hole? How can they do this? I didn't because it was way too difficult and I simply gave up. Visually, you would have had to, I was trying to like count how many are coming out like frame by frame. But then also there's no accurate measurements on how big a squid is. There's a few sources in the wikis, that sort of thing. And, you know, you could maybe go off in movie visual estimations. But then most problematically, and why I ultimately gave up on doing anything flow rate related, is because they're shown to have more than one digger. And this is a screenshot you can just see, I've slapped on screen. You can see at least 3 digging tools in this shot. And before it pans up to this frame, which I screen capped, it's come from another digger. So there's 4 in play. There's at least 4 being used. And of those 4, we see that 2 managed to penetrate the dock in the battle. And so I didn't bother with the rate of flow using how many squids are coming out of the holes, because A, there's more than one hole. We know for sure there's 2. B, the maths was complicated. And C, I don't know with great certainty that all 4 of these torpedoes didn't penetrate the dock, right? And therefore, you know, putting the flow rate thing out of whack. So the primary reason is there's more than one hole. It's just not exactly clear how many there are over the course of the 20-minute battle. But yeah, it's a fair point to talk about the flow rate thing, because that was honestly the first thing I considered doing, but then pretty quickly gave up on it. Joel says, you mentioned Animatrix, is it worth watching? Yeah, give it a flick. I'm sure you can. I think it's free on YouTube. I don't know if it's like naughty haram rip on YouTube or like legally on YouTube, but it's certainly worth it. It ties in some of the backstory, particularly around this battle. There's a few parts to it. The final flight of the Osiris. The Osiris is one of the other Hovercraft ships. That shows pretty much them learning of the machine invasion force and then them fleeing back to Zion, or attempting to try and break that news out. And that's also where they get the figure of 250k from. It's from the Osiris. They mention that ship in Matrix Reloaded. So it ties in pretty good. Okay, next slide. Here's a few comments speaking to what I cited as 25% accuracy rate on the guns. Teddy Zerg says, this isn't true. There would be better than 25% accuracy and less than 3 hits to kill on average. Before the squid survive the tunnel of death to draw fire in the open. So with just a few guns, they never break through. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of that. The point is he's saying he thinks 25% accuracy was too low. Next comment from the Mr. Spock, 25% accuracy rate for autocannons with manual targeting is very generous. I'd say it's more like 5%, maybe as low as 3%. So he said 25% is too high. Look, I'm not going to die on this hill. I'd probably, in hindsight, agree with Mr. Spock. 25 is probably a bit too high. But again, this is one of those things where I purely had to make an assumption, right? There was very little sort of calculation in this because I'm going to be real, boys. I have a limitation to my maths, right? I can do soldier level high school mathematics. If you came here for advanced calculus, you're at the wrong channel, boys. I apologize. So, and I kind of tried to state as much in the video. I'm just doing the simplest maths that's going to yield a workable result, right? A workable figure that will logistically give us some clue of what we need. And so getting a very accurate accuracy rate, you then have to somehow analyze how many hits they're getting, because there's the two different types of engagements, I would suppose. You're shooting the swarm, which is when the squids are like flying around in the big horde. That sounded more like a pig. In which case you're almost never going to miss. But then you've got the breakaway squids, and you're probably going to miss a lot. So how do you even work that calculation out? I don't know, boys. I'm going to be real. I don't know. So I just erred on the side of, I suppose, I applied a bit of just common sense, a bit of visual extrapolation, and went, they're definitely not, I don't think, hitting more than they're missing, so I'm going to give them 25%, 1 in 4, right? Based on that, if you're hosing the swarm, you might fire 100 rounds and hit a squid with every round. But then if you're hitting one of these breakaway squids who are skittering along the concrete roof, you might fire 10 and miss all 10. Or hit with the 11th. So, yeah, I'm not going to die on this hill. If you wish to critique me for 25% being too high, I probably would agree, honestly, in hindsight. And it's a fair criticism. But then I would not counter with, but then I would also say that, okay, like, how are we coming up with 5%? How are we coming up with 3? What's the working out on that, right? So you see what I mean? But again, I'm not like rejecting this criticism. It's very fair. But it was also one of those ones where I had to kind of make some assumptions. And I'll talk about this too in the coming slides, sort of facts and assumptions. Peter Bowie says, once you create the math algorithms, you can modify the variables to determine the best or worst case scenarios, adjusting them as more wargaming is done. Still, you had limited time to do an analysis. Yeah, that's correct. I pretty much did as much. I played around with some of the figures. Once I had it all done, I changed some of the figures multiple times. I changed the reload time, for example. So I'd had that as an assumption at first. I made an educated guess on the reload time. But then it was when I went back and I found that clip of the kid reloading the APU, not in combat. So we'll call it the no stress reload, and timed that one at like 6 seconds. And then took into account that he's a rookie. He sucks. He's not even finished the training. And then so from that, we can assume that the trained reloaders probably can do it much quicker. But then I just rounded up to 10 based on also the friction of the combat, right? That it's probably not going to ever be as quick as their perfect training speed reload. So yeah, that was one example of where I did that. I had numbers and I went back, and it took me a couple of days to get all those numbers down pat, which you might not believe because it is pretty simple math. But like I said, simple brain, give rock, just to get a functional solution. Okay. One more comment here. Avro Architect. If anyone wants to argue, I'd throw out the overpenetration of the shells into squids in the hole versus the fact that if enough squids are pushed through the hole fast enough, the corpses act as a ablative armor shield. Oh my god, look at the bloody big words over here. Allowing more through to escape into the docks. Yeah, that's yeah, you're correct. I didn't consider overpenetration. Oh my god, that's almost a separate. I could have a whole comment section argument about that in itself, because now we're getting into not just the numbers game, which Avro Architect seems very well versed in, but we're also now talking kind of the science of terminal ballistics, as in what bullets do when they hit people and things. And then we've got lots of follow-up questions. Yes, they're using 30mm. What kind of projectile do they have? Do they have armor penetrating? Is it multi-purpose explosive tip? We know it's a tracer. Yeah, whole separate can of worms. Rhino Oz, didn't you also have a number of hits to kill? So it's not 25% of bullets killed. Yeah, that's correct. So not outright 25% of rounds fired are a kill. I had 3 hits to kill was the figures I was working with. Here's another comment, or a few words to this effect. I wonder if the static guns weren't larger caliber. At least it would have made sense. That comment from Secateur. This was also, yeah, in hindsight. No, at the time, actually, I did think it was plausible. The control center static guns were a large caliber. There's a few indicators. One, just the size of the muzzle brake, but I initially dismissed that purely because the APU guns, when you see some of the shots of them front on, the bore is insanely huge. It's much larger than 30mm. But then the ammo, I'm pretty confident, ended up being 30mm. I'm reasonably confident with that extrapolation. So I didn't want to go off the muzzle brake and the bore exit size because I think it's more stylized, right? And the muzzle brakes on the static cannons are fucking enormous, obscenely big. But then the probably biggest visual evidence, I think, is, I've got it on screen here, it's the tracer rounds. If you see the tracers glowing a little bit thick, THICC, from the control center guns, it would suggest that they are a larger caliber. I thought about considering that as well. And again, in the sake of simplicity, I simply rolled the control center guns into the equation of the APUs, as in I made them 30mm as well, for the sake of logistically counting the ammo and then also trying to work out the kill rate. Probably could have, maybe gone into a bit more detail on that, but like, I've got limited, perfect numbers, perfect planning takes perfect time. I ain't got that. You know what I mean? This was the other thing about these videos too. I'm not just coping and making excuses. I'm just trying to explain, I guess, where my head's at. That I need to get something out the door, right? And these videos hopefully are a bit quicker to make, which they are, than my other long form ones. And also it comes down to sort of mathematical aptitude, which I don't got. So making that equation then where they're firing a separate rate, I'd pretty much then be doing 2 separate sets of rate of fire and 2 separate sets of kills. They'd need different hits to kill, they need different accuracy, and it was just getting a bit unwieldy and uncomplicated. So that is why I rolled them all into the same one. I also thought that logistically it wouldn't make sense to have a different caliber based on that. These magazines, which are shown, I'm tapping the screen, you can't see it. They're the same ones they use in the hovercrafts. So that shot there of that dude loading that magazine is inside the hammer as it's racing back to Zion. So we know then with certainty that the hovercrafts have the same guns as the APUs. And then we can know that they're also 30mm just like the APUs, which would make sense. Why would you have different calibers in your post-apocalyptic resource-low city? You would want to just streamline your logistic chain as best you can. So then in that point, I was like, well, the control center would have the same caliber too. Why the fuck would you have a separate caliber? It's not like you have the luxury of an infinite resource chain. So that was kind of one set of thinking, but I will concede that visually it does look like they are a larger caliber just based on the tracer. End result, I simply ignored that and made all the maths the same caliber, being 30mm. Okay. Comments. Ryan, proving you need thousands of mechs proves that the style of defense is completely useless. Yeah, probably not the best. Bullets onto metal. Raymondo, speaking of videos, the new Avatar movie trailer. Any plans on those for future videos? Yes, I'll get around to an Avatar one. I'll probably make it an offensive operation when I do it. Rhino says, was just about to say that if they were a different caliber, that's probably a misplay from the humans. Yeah, kind of what I'm getting at. Just logistically wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Okay, next slide. We've got about 8 slides left, boys. Hang in there. We're on the bloody home stretch. Let me drink some water. XMech says, new comment on screen. You should be looking at a screenshot of the kid amongst the bullet casings. XMech, who has an American flag in his PFP. Those weren't 30mm, inverted commas, autocannons. They were 50 cal at best, most likely 30 caliber. I like how he's got quotation marks around 30 millimeters. Like I'm alleging that 30 millimeters is a thing that exists. Like it's fake. They weren't 30 millimeter cannons. Like he's accusing me of lying. 30 millimeters aren't real. They were 50 cal at best, most likely 30 caliber. Mate, X-Mech, sorry, I thought I did a good job of providing evidence that they were 30 millimeters in the video. Apparently not. So here's the screenshot again. X-Mech, if you see this, mate, have a look at that. If you think these casings on the ground are 50 cal or 30 cal, you are smoking daganja, man. And Mary Bros, come and get your boy. He needs to go to Specsavers and get his fucking retinas checked. But yeah, I just wanted to, I'm not shitting on him too hard here. I wanted to speak to this because it was fun speaking to Cartridgegram on Instagram, who's a fellow Aussie. And yeah, he had some really just common sense and just knowledge that I never would have been able to have or find myself to get this information. And that he pretty quickly concluded that, yeah, it was filmed in Sydney, right? And so there'd be lots of 30 millimeter casings around an old disposal store and that sort of stuff because the Mirage jets, which the Australian Air Force used to have, used to fire this 30 millimeter case or this 30 millimeter round. And he said himself, he was like, yeah, I used to see and buy this stuff from Aussie disposal store. There's tons of it just laying around. And the timeline as well, it was still 1999, probably filmed 1997, 1998. Yeah, it makes sense that there's still lots of 30 millimeter casings floating around that, some prop department could just be like, hey, we need this. And they go, oh, yeah, we'll just buy some. It's cheaper than making it. It's before 3D printing and all that sort of stuff. So it would make sense that here they had 30 millimeter casings lying on the ground. And maybe that was chicken and egg. And they found these first and then made the APUs 30 millimeters. Or they probably designed the APUs first, I would imagine, on some sketch. And they just found the nearest real world prop casings to match for their practical effects scenes. Get what I mean? Comments. Avro Architect, those are the size of monster cans. Yeah, it's hard to see his hand because it's blurry. He's moving, the kid. But just look how enormous these things are. They're huge. They're clearly not 30 caliber. I don't know. If you'd stopped at 50 cal, I would have kind of been a bit less harsh. But suggesting that the 30 cal 308 or whatever you want to say is insane. He may have been thinking of 30 by 173 from the Warthog. I don't know, man. The way he uses 30 millimeters in quotation marks and then goes on to use like imperial caliber, like inches, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he's saying. Either way, I think he's bloody. Let me just get his eyes checked. X-Mech, you got an appointment booked in with the optometrist, mate. I'll help you schedule it. Reach out to me if you need help on how to do that. Okay. This is what I wanted to speak to as well, so now we're getting back into just purely military planning stuff. Facts versus assumptions, because I have to use both when I'm making the videos. So here's a quote from, I'm not going to read that verbatim, but that's a extract on assumptions in military planning. That comes from, I'm tilting my head back and closing my eyes to try and remember, Field Manual 5-0 from the US Army, which is planning, as in military or planning before the mission, right? Goes into the MDMP, the military decision-making process, stuff like that. I get pooed on a bit in some comments in some videos. It's like a lot of assumptions here. It's like, well, yeah, because I don't have perfect information. And even when you're doing a real military operation, rarely will you have perfect information. And in the absence of perfect information, you have to make assumptions. So yeah, I get poo-pooed in the comments for making assumptions, but assumptions are a very valid and very real military thing. They get used in battle planning and tactical planning all the time because you have to, because you don't know every single thing about the variables involved in your operation. That is the enemy, the terrain, the civilians involved. And so I'll read a quick extract from this, or just some of it. An assumption provides a supposition about the current situation or future course of events presumed to be true in the absence of facts. Assumptions must be valid, logical, and realistic, and necessary for planning to continue. And that's the primary reason you make assumptions when you're making a plan. This is military context, because you have to keep going. If you come across a void of information, or you have an RFI, a request for information, that you just hit a black hole on, you can't just like stop, or you can't wait forever for that void of information to be filled. Does that make sense? So we have to go and seize this bridge. How many enemy are at the bridge? We don't know. Okay, let's wait until we know. Like, no, you have to continue making a plan to seize the bridge, and then you would maybe apply some common sense based on the size of the objective, some broader context, like how many enemy you know are in the AO as a whole, go over some previous patrol reports or something from the unit you took over from. How many enemy were at the bridge this time last year? And then you would make an assumption based on all that broader context, right? You don't just say, no, we have to wait and find out how many are at the bridge. You should arrange for that to happen. You should arrange for reconnaissance or ISR to find that out, because then the ultimate goal of assumptions, and I'm not sure if it says it somewhere here, down the bottom, information collection assets are also directed to confirm or deny assumptions. The ultimate goal is to turn an assumption into a fact. So you make assumptions so you can keep planning, but then you also list these down, and then you dispatch your reconnaissance to transform them from an assumption into a fact or disprove them. Does that make sense? So yeah, I just wanted to, it was an interesting chance to talk about assumptions, because I get pooped on a bit in comments for a lot of assumptions here, mate. You're assuming that the Uruk-hai bloody won't die, will die from bullets. Uruk-hai can take 30 caliber to the face and keep coming. And I just wanted to take a chance to point out that assumptions are a real thing in military planning. I'm going to use them in making my silly little YouTube videos as well. Because I have to. Like I said, there's times when I don't have perfect information and I simply have to make an assumption because I can't find the exact fact. And B, I don't have unlimited time. My time is valuable, and so is yours. And I know I'll waste a lot of yours yapping on these live streams, but I appreciate you all the same. But yeah, the so what is I have to get a video out, right? I can't spend unlimited forever making a video until it's perfect to every degree. I have to make assumptions to keep it going. And I've got some examples of that. So here's how this is not a military thing. This was just something I reflected. I was like, what am I doing when I'm making these videos? This is kind of how it comes to pass, right? So if I'm researching something, the Matrix, I have my RFIs, like as I'm going through. And for the guys in the members live streams, you'll see we listed some of these RFIs. So when we're doing the lead up ones, members live streams, that is, I put out some of these RFIs, like for the next video. So for this one, I had a bunch of questions. It was like, how many squids are there? How many humans are there? I had one I never ended up answering, which is, what's that blue thing coming out of the dock? It turned out to not matter. This is why I didn't talk about it ever again. What caliber are the guns? These were all RFIs that we discussed in the members live stream. And then I went away, and in the week between, I went and found some of that information. Some of it I did not, so I had to make assumptions, right? But once I have my RFIs, then I go through and I hopefully find a primary source for that information, which in this case would be the movie. A secondary source would then be something like one of the online wikis, or a canon, say, book, or a video game, or something like this that's adjacent to the franchise, but not the explicit source. So in this case, the Battle of Zion from the Matrix Revolutions. Failing that, then I can, if it's not in a primary or secondary source, then I'll have to extrapolate it. Use some kind of other figures or stuff that I can evidence visually get perhaps from the film to get a pretty accurate number or pretty accurate answer or fact. And failing all that, then I have to make an assumption. And that's kind of how it works moving forwards. Some examples of this. So my first question, or one of the early RFIs I had, was how many squids are there? This one is from the primary source. It's from the film, and it's explicitly stated there's 250,000. No worries, that's a fact. We know this with certainty then. An example of where it's not a primary source or not a straight up fact, what caliber are the APU cannons? In the film, it's not stated, it's not explicitly shown, as in there's not a scene of one of the ammunition boxes with 30mm, I don't know, NATO or something on it that we can use. Secondary sources, it's not mentioned in the video games, it's not mentioned in something, that's official, but not the Matrix Revolution films. Sorry, it was in the wikis, like I've got on screen here. I'd almost say they're like a tertiary source, not a secondary, but I'm not going to make that many bullet points here for my workflow. But wikis are sketchy. So in that case, I then reach out to Cartridge Graham, and then we apply all that other context I talked about. It was filmed in Australia. We know that the Australian Air Force had Mirage cannons. We know the Mirage cannons had 30 by, I can't remember, 113mm rounds out of their cannons, DEFA cannons. That might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. Sydney had lots of disposal stores which used to stock this stuff, just based on the visual size. We come up with 30 millimeters, right? So I'm reasonably confident that 30 millimeters is the accurate figure, but I don't know that with certainty as a fact because it's not stated in the film. It's not stated in any secondary sources, but with this extrapolation, I'm pretty confident with 30 millimeters. Conversely, we get to the control tower ones. This case, I have to make just a purely assumption based on the visually larger tracer that they are larger than 30 millimeters. And now that I look at this, there might have been a better example I could have come up with. I can't think of one right now. But I hope this just shows sort of what is going through my melon when I'm looking for information from these in the sense of research, and how I come up with, say, numbers, or why I say the things I'm saying, because I'm not trying to, I try where possible to not just make shit up. Sometimes it happens, but I guess I'm trying to explain how and why, boys, because sometimes you just have to make assumptions. The video will never get made if you don't, and the information just isn't there sometimes. And it's a very real part of military planning. Does that make sense? Holy, I don't know if you heard that. Something big fell over in the background. I think Fernando's bloody running amok. What do we got? Ryan Dawes. Yo, like and subscribe. Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Let me scroll. Have I missed anything? Let me scroll up a bit. Gal 8 bigger than that. Why didn't they have more turrets in Zion? Like, they should have been 10 times the amount of turrets than we saw inside of Zion. Yeah, again, that kind of gets back to that conversation about did these machines build the city for them? And then the machines in there like, why are we building 30 millimeter cannons? We're gonna have to come back in 100 years and wipe them out. They're gonna kill us. This is dumb. What did the infantry contribute to the battle, if anything? They're shown as anti-tank, well, not anti-tank, anti-armored rocket teams. So the civilians and the infantry, I suppose that's their main contribution. They have the dual rocket launcher things, which is just a fictional made-up rocket launcher, and they're targeting the diggers, which is, again, part of Locke's plan. He identifies the diggers as a critical capability of the enemy attack, and he dispatches the infantry with the rockets to try and wipe those out. And they have sort of success. They ended up destroying one of the diggers with these rocket launchers, the infantry, that is. Ryan Dawes, IMFDB. I love IMFDB. That's Internet Movie Firearms Database. Excuse me. Typically only deals with real weapons or fake ones mocked up with the real ones, i.e. original Star Wars blasters were German and English. Someone else mentioned IMFDB. I'm trying to look up. Yeah, I you know what? I did check IMFDB as well, because I do like IMFDB, and I think it's a very good source, because a lot of the time IMFDB has actual comments from the armorers from the films and that sort of thing. So yes, IMFDB is a wiki, but I would say it's a pretty credible wiki in that way, in that it's got some fairly accurate citations from people involved. But IMFDB, I believe, didn't mention anything about the APUs. Okay, moving on. Next slide. We're nearly done, boys. Thanks everyone for hanging in and playing along. Okay, so these three comments here, they all speak to one of the other things in my maths that was perhaps, I'm not going to say it was wrong, I will just say it was lacking in detail. And there were quite a few maths wizards in the chat who were pointing out how it potentially could or should have been done. Just someone 6608 says, obviously the rate of attrition would rise as the number of APUs decreases and vice versa. I think you need to model that logarithmically and not linearly. Also, you should calculate the whole throughput. It is possible that at some level of firepower, the squid would be saturated and extra gun necessary. The Plasma Collider 6431 says, as soon as you introduce an attrition rate into the equation, this is probably going to turn into a differential equation. This is because every treated gun is going to lead to a non-linear decrease in kills per second, or whatever other metrics you're using. This kind of feels similar to the rocket equation, where you have to account for the change in weight as you burn up fuel. The Cactus Man 17, cool name, says, important to remember that attrition losses for the APUs aren't a linear thing. You start off with 1 to 2 losses, which leaves a small gap for 3 or more losses a few minutes later, which turns into 10, 30, 70, etc. It's an exponential or even logarithmic progression, not a linear one. Similarly, the squids get 1 to 2 units to the nearest defenders, then 5 to 6, then 20. Then they start killing ammo runners, etc., which knocks out dozens of guns at a time. To which I replied, that's correct. I started playing with non-linear attrition, but I'll confess I lacked the mathematical aptitude and appetite, so kept it simple. And yeah, there were quite a few comments to words of this effect. I noticed that maths people were pretty polite. People who were good at maths and were critiquing my working out were, for the most part, pretty polite about it and not like buttholes, which was pleasant to see. And they're right, yeah, my maths definitely could have been more detailed in this sense, because they're correct in that it's not a linear attrition rate. And I didn't use the fancy words they're using because, like I said, boys, I got bloody high school level maths, and I'm old. High school was a long time ago, so I don't remember it that much. And in my time in the military, I bloody used a calculator. You should too. The point is, I have simple maths ability, and I kept it simple as well. When my goal was to have a workable figure to get a workable logistical solution for the battle. But I did identify what they're talking about. I just didn't know. I didn't identify it in the words they're using. I did my working out, and then I was like, but this doesn't make sense because, yeah, that rate of fire is not going to be the same the whole time through as they take casualties. But I just don't understand logarithmic progression and differential equations or all this other stuff these guys are talking about because, yeah, high school level maths boys. But I intuitively knew that was a problem. I just didn't know how to fix it, right? And I will say it was curious because a lot of the people pointing out the flaws in the maths, and I'm not poo-pooing these guys, that it tells me it wasn't a super easy thing to fix, is that no one provided no one provided it. If it had been like, hey, you missed this, it's x times square times b equals 50, therefore it should have been that, then it would have been super easy maths, right? But that it's not, and that there was no one providing that comment tells me that it's like, yeah, it must be complicated stuff that's way above my pay grade. Who's that dude in the chat? Architect. Yeah, there you are. I figured you were chatting some maths before. I'm like, this boy is gonna have something to say here about the maths because I think he's got maths chops. Avro Architect, that is. Joel Dalton, non-linear attrition doesn't count for third element of combat power morale. Yeah, true. Some variables cannot be mathematically counted for. Ray Cone mod. What the hell? Why is Ray Cone hyphenated? Yeah, I was thinking the same. At some point, the APUs would have to throw the squids off those small bridges if they want to get enough ammo through. What are you guys talking about? What are you talking about? Something I thought about after watching the video. Those ammo loader guys at the wheelbarrows would have had a hell of a time getting to and resupplying the APUs with all the dead machines around. Yeah, that's true. I'll admit I hand waved that, and I just threw in, like, this is all assuming perfect reloads and the resupply chain can keep up. I thought about how could you maybe fix that, and you'd need almost like big ammo belts, but you'd have to protect them so they can't get severed or cut by the squids. If you, I don't know, man, do they have sandbags? Old school, right? Like, it's like when you dig in your comms line when you're in a defensive position so it doesn't get bloody crumped by artillery or fragmentation or chopped by the enemy. If you could have ammo chutes like what they have on, miniguns and stationary fixed machine gun positions, but those protected, like if they run under the gangways, but then you're pretty much turning your mobile APU into a static defensive gun. But now that I say that aloud, that's pretty much all they did with them in the film anyway, so whatever. Sorry, getting back to the slides here, because I got off tangent and I want to do these people in the comments on the screen credit. I was just saying before, no one got in there and did the maths of the people who critiqued the maths, except this guy here, Detox Fidelity. He's got a, I'm not sure if that's him in the photo, little grinning, handsome young man with spectacles. That's how I know he's smart. He's got glasses. 1350, let's do the calculus, lads. If we assume a gun kills squids at a rate of X per minute, and the squids kill Y guns per minute, so this dude proceeds to jump in and do the motherfucking calculus, which is what I was talking about before, that, yeah, I knew there was something. Again, I'm not going to say I'm bloody wrong, I'm crossing my arms. I'm going to say that it could have been more detailed. That I will concede. He proceeds to do the maths, which I thought was great, because like I said, there are a lot of people poo-pooing the maths for using linear equations and not being detailed enough, but this dude here was the only one who was like, yeah, okay, here's how it needs to be better. And he goofs it up a little bit, but then he corrects it down the bottom here. So final answer from Detox Fidelity. Coral Sea, actually I slightly messed up the math and put in 8 guns destroyed per minute when it should be 16 because 2 guns per APU. That value gives 1,079 guns or 540 APUs. So if you had used proper equations, whatever the maths nerds were talking about before, logarithmic squid shit, differentials, then you get 540 APUs, which in my defense, my final figure being 620, wasn't too far off, right? And obviously you'd rather have more than less. So again, I feel somewhat vindicated in that I was using basic maths to get a workable solution, to get a logistical answer of how many guns would it take to save, which is the title of the video, and is what I hope I delivered an answer to by the time everyone had finished watching that video. But yeah, thanks to Detox Fidelity here for doing the final calculations and getting the truly accurate number of 540 APUs. Pretty cool, huh? Let's go back to the chat. What are we talking about? Oh my god, you boys are spurging out about maths in the chat. We all know, right, Raycone mod, we all know that as morale drops, everyone turns into a gigachad like Mifune. That's true. Avro, well, you are right about me. I was a mechanical engineering student in college before I was forced to drop out. Oh, bugger. But you got some big brains though, mate. Shame you had to drop out. It's not like the APUs move around much. Probably would need to stage the mag boxes. The APU says Rhino. Yeah, that's another potential thing. Yeah, they could have had little ammo points instead of all running out of the control center, but you could also argue that they'd be very unprotected. But on the same note, again, now that I say that aloud, how protected is a child soldier with a fucking wheelbarrow running across a rickety bridge that's full of scrap? So yeah, it's a fair point. They could have had little separate ammo bunkers, protected little areas, which then say fed a cluster of 5 APUs, and then just refill that with the runners. So you have to do less running. I don't know, it's potentially. Tama Malosi, trade a beer for every shell dropped. Thanks, mate. Avro Architect, I went from refusing to tough alcohol when I started my first year to loving cocktails in 9 months. Oh, is this like engineering school memes? I've seen those photos of dudes and it's like year one undergraduate and then year 4 and they look like they've been through the trenches. Give me an engineer over a mathematician any day. Okay, guys, I think I am bloody done. Thanks for playing along. To the chaps who are the members and who play along, Ryan, Joel, and I wanted to shout out as well, bloody Pork Chop. Last live stream we did, Pork Chop bought 10 people memberships. I didn't even know you could do that. But he bought people memberships. So there's 10 people out there who have memberships courtesy of Pork Chop. No, Lamb Chop. Lamb Chop, sorry. His name was Lamb Chop, not Pork Chop. For you guys who are members and have been playing along in the planning live streams, thank you. I'll have another one next weekend where I'll also reveal what I'm bloody doing for the next video. So I hope to see you there. Chaps who aren't members, consider joining up if you want more of these live streams, because I'm going to be doing them pretty much on a weekly basis now at our same time. And you'll get to see what we're doing behind the scenes in terms of how we being me and the chat, how we're planning the RFIs, how we list out some of the questions and some of the problems that we're going through, both tactically and then also for the design of the video for the coming project, which I'll reveal next Saturday in the members live stream. You also get the sick badges inspired by OG Call of Duty, and some dudes are leveling up over these as we go, which is good to see. Thanks everyone for playing along. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Avro. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Rhino. Thank you, Tama. Anyone I can see in the chat right now. Thanks for playing along, and I'll see the members next weekend, same time, and I'll see everyone else for the next debrief live after the next video. Peace. And Nicanor from Instagram. I know you, bloody. I remember you. You don't have to introduce yourself. How you doing, mate? Sorry, I was about to log off and then your name popped up. Long time follower on Instagram, first time catching live while pulling an all-nighter. Great stuff as usual. Cheers, boys. Mate, I know you're in the EU somewhere, so it must be late for you, but thanks for joining, mate. And yeah, if there's any other Instagram folks here too, welcome. I like seeing the Instagram crowd. Instagram was where I started the whole CSRC shebang, so I've always got a soft spot placed in my heart for all the people who sort of supported CSRC over Instagram. And if you're not on Instagram, check it out, because every Friday I run a weekly quiz in the stories. That's sort of just like a Soldiers 5, general military knowledge, geopolitical, weapon, kit, recognition, bit of everything, mixed bag. And that's sort of still and will be forever one of the underlying purposes of CSRC, which is to provide sort of informal military education. And again, how I role play, I RP, I LARP that I'm like, still giving a lesson in the military. It might be cringe, but it's the only way I know how to really present and speak, because that's obviously where my experience comes from. So judge that if you wish. But yeah, when I'm speaking to you chaps, I'm kind of like role playing that I'm still giving like a PowerPoint in the army, because it helps just pull my mask down and pretend that I'm doing something of value, not just like, not that I'm not doing anything of value. That sounds shitty. How can I reframe it? Gives me the confidence to yap to you guys, just pretending that I've got a classroom full of soldiers and that I'm trying to like teach meaningful stuff. Get what I mean? That's kind of what I'm doing in my brain. So that's stylistically, if it seems military moronish, then yeah, probably because it is. But I'm gonna wrap it up there, boys. Thank you for everything, and I'll see you all next time. Peace and love. Ciao.